For as long as people have called this place home, they've been welcomed with clean air, clean water, and an abundance of nature. As time went on, people saw the need to balance how we build cities with how we protect farms and forests. That's why across Greater Portland, in 24 cities and 3 counties, there's one metro government that brings us all together to maintain that vital balance, to provide services across cities and counties, to create a better future together. Hello, we're Metro. We plan for housing, jobs, and safe transportation. We protect land, air, and water by managing garbage and recycling. We support arts and culture by overseeing local venues to keep the economy growing. And we connect people to nature across 17,000 acres of parks and trails and at the Oregon Zoo. Metro is all of us working together, connecting how we live today with how we plan for the future. Hello, we're Metro, and so are you.
Wonderful. We have a quorum here, and I am going to call our Metro Council business meeting for June 15, 2023 to order. Connor, our clerk, will call roll for attendance, please.
Thank you. Councillor Wong. Present. Councillor Simpson.
Present.
Councillor Rosenthal.
Present.
President Peterson, Councillor Gonzalez, and Councillor Nolan are excused today, and Deputy Council President Lewis.
Present. Before we move too much further, let's do our safety video for in-person attendees, please.
I'm Bob Lee, one of the animal curators here at the Oregon Zoo, and safety is a huge part of our job. We focus on the safety of our guests who come to spend time with us every day, the staff who works very closely with these animals, and for the animals themselves. I'm here at the Oregon Zoo, and you're in the Metro Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairs to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at the zoo.
Wonderful. First agenda, I will open public communication on non-agenda items. Connor, could you please describe our procedures for public communication today?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis. So if anyone wishes to testify on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage the timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. If you have not already signed up to speak, you can do so now by raising your hand. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can raise your hand by hitting the raise hand button either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. If you're joining us in person, you can either raise your hand or fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. As a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, councillors, we do not have anybody who has signed up in advance to speak. There have been a couple of pieces of written testimony this last week that have been distributed to you. And with that, I'll just give folks another second or two. And I don't see any hands going up. Deputy Council President Lewis.
Likewise, I don't see anybody rushing with blue cards, so I'm going to close our public communication item for today. Moving us into the agenda of our first presentation, which is the Year 2 report from the Natural Areas and Capital Program Performance Oversight Committee. We're going to hear this report with regards to our bond work to date. Metro's ability to continue to make investments in parks and nature on behalf of the region depends in part on making sure we're keeping the trust of the voters by delivering on promises made. We rely so much on this committee to review and report on progress since the 2019 ballot measure. I would like to thank our co-chairs Bert Edwards and Carrie Waters for being here and thank all the members of the Natural Area Capital Program Performance Oversight Committee. The work you're doing provides invaluable service to the public, to your neighbors, to people who use our parks. It has ensured that taxpayer funds are spent effectively, efficiently, and in alignment with what we said we were going to do in the measure. So at this moment, I will call up our Park and Nature Department Director, John Blasher, and committee co-chairs to present the report.
Hello, Deputy Council President Lewis, councilors. For the record, John Blasher, he, him, his pronouns, Parks and Nature Director. Very excited to be here today and join our co-chairs for the Natural Areas Capital Program Performance Oversight Committee, Bert Edwards and Carrie Waters. I swear one of these days we're gonna get a shorter name for this committee, but for now it is what we have. So before I hand it over to them, just want to share a few words. Independent community oversight has been essential to all of Metro's voter-approved investment measures, and today is a great opportunity to hear directly from the committee on key findings and takeaways. The Natural Areas and Capital Program Performance Oversight Committee provides independent oversight of the 2019 Parks and Nature Bond, the remainder of the 2006 Natural Areas Bond, and capital investments from Metro's Parks and Nature 5-year local option levy. While bond investments as part of overall agency expenditures are subject to annual financial audits and also subject to review from the Metro Auditor, the Oversight Committee provides a unique and independent perspective and value in conducting ongoing review of the portfolio of bond investments in a way that allows for tracking progress and digging into specifics over time. The committee reports to the council annually throughout the life of the bond, and we expect that the questions they ask and answer will continue to deepen and expand over time. The reporting work that the committee is doing now is setting the foundation for that, and we appreciate their ongoing service. As you hear the committee's report back, one thing to note is that the information is for bond investments and awards up to December 2022, and the bond financial reporting is actually through spring of 2023, as our finance reporting is done on a fiscal and not calendar year. So this is a success story. It's a good moment to pause and appreciate the hard work and commitment of our region. Normally we have slides and all the great visuals. Today you just have us talking and sharing a few words. So we really appreciate your time. We've heard over and over again that our region cares about parks and nature, even with other issues that are taking center stage in public consciousness. The voters of the region strongly endorsed the Parks and Nature Bond measure in 2019 to improve water quality, protect fish and wildlife habitat, and connect people with nature close to home across 6 program areas, and emphasize continued commitment to this vision by approving the renewal of the Parks and Nature levy in fall of 2022. You may also have seen recently reports from the Trust for Public Land that's ranked the city of Portland as one of the top cities in the country for proximity and access to parks. It was really exciting to see that report. Look forward to spending some time digging into that data further across the region for all of our partners. We also know that access isn't only being able to physically get to a space and site. With the 2019 Parks and Nature measure, the council set an aspiration for more equitable and resilient region everywhere, no matter who you are, where you live, and what your abilities are, and should be able to access, feel welcome, and enjoy our regional special places, as well as the decision-making process that goes into that. So we know we're not there yet, but that goal is building on our work and the vision of implementing this bond. When we were here a year ago to share the committee's report, it underlined that that across the bond program, we needed time to transform how we do business. A year later, bond refinement is complete. All 6 programs are launched in making investments in the region, and I'm proud to be here to share a little bit more of the detail of how the hard work of council, staff, and partners over the last few years is beginning to pay off. We also know that the type of investment that this bond sets the bar for will continue to take time to develop, refine, and measure those impacts. On the staff side, we anticipate being able to further partner with the Oversight Committee on tools and frameworks to help evaluate that impact of the investments and strengthen the region's climate resilience, advancing racial equity, and how we've shaped meaningful community engagement, not only as an agency, but as partners across the region. We've really just scratched the surface of what we can talk about, and we're excited to do more with the storytelling through the website, with interviews and surveys of our community partners and members, and through online dashboards with more information to come. So with all of that, it's my pleasure to introduce our co-chairs to say a few words on behalf of the committee. Bert Edwards is the Director of Programs at Rethink Media. Before joining Rethink in fall 22, he served as the Communications Director at Friends of Columbia Gorge, where he led rapid response public education efforts around the 2017 Eagle Creek Fire and directed efforts to center equity, accessibility, inclusion, and Friends public engagement programs. He previously worked for over 20 years in Washington, D.C., leading nonprofit, public, and private sector organizations to create and manage communications campaigns and effectively shape public opinion on pressing policy debates from climate change to international conflict. Carrie Waters Is a member of the Tlingit tribe, Raven Moiety and Dog Salmon clan, and a lifelong member of the Portland urban community, Indian community. Early on, family and community members instilled a passion in her for first foods and other cultural resources of the Salmon Nation. She's worked on policy with Portland City Commissioner Amanda Fritz, managed engagement and advocacy at the Native American Youth and Family Center, and works as contracts supervisor at Portland Bureau of Transportation, where she engages with Portland's diverse business community and facilitates system changes that produce equitable outcomes now and for future generations. And with that, I'd like to pass it over to our co-chairs. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Blasher, and good morning to our council members. Again, for the record, my name is Carrie Waters. I use she, her pronouns, and I am honored to serve as co-chair on the Metro Parks and Nature, let's see, what are we calling it these days? Parks and Natural Areas and Capital Performance Committee, I think is the most recent iteration. So thank you again for making time for the year 2 report back from the Natural Areas and Capital Program Performance Oversight Committee. On behalf of the committee, my co-chair Bert and I will share a few comments about the committee's work to date, some bond highlights, and some key takeaways from the committee's second year of work. Before we begin, I would like to thank the counselors who have served as our liaisons to the committee, Counselors Nolan, Rosenthal, and Simpson, as well as Counselor Craddock and Lewis, who had served previously as well, and who are present and supportive of the committee's discussions and efforts to build committee foundations. We look forward to working with you and continuing to discuss these issues that we're speaking with you about today. I would like to acknowledge the work and commitment of our fellow 15 committee members whose collective voices we represent today. I would like to thank Metro staff for their ongoing support, as well as a special recognition for Brian Mercier, Northwest Regional Director of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, who served on the committee through 2022, as well as my predecessor, Lisa Friedman, a former U.S. Forest Service executive who served as co-chair with Bert before I joined in this capacity. So our committee is made up of a diverse set of individuals with expertise in a diverse array of areas, including but not limited to land acquisition, tribal sovereignty, conservation, community engagement, working lands, finance, and accessibility. Collectively, we work to ensure that bond implementation reflects and aligns with the bond program's goals and criteria. Since the last annual report to Metro Council in May 2022, our committee has focused on advancing efforts towards the following committee goals. Build understanding of the bond and the broader context of committees within Metro. Continue evaluation of the bond work to date with a focus on tools that make sense of progress on bond criteria. And to continue to build our committee membership and leadership structures with a focus on committee sustainability and assurance that there's a space at each meeting for us as committee members to engage with one another, to discuss our key priorities, and to provide guidance to staff. The bond is complex and expansive, and the committee formed topic-specific working groups to review in more depth the following issue areas. Bond-funded land acquisitions, bond-funded community engagement, or bond engagement in general, and bond finance. The highlights that we share with you today came from committee discussions around a detailed staff reporting document that we've reviewed and refined since winter earlier this year. This report can be found on the committee's webpage and is a part of the meeting packet for today. So chatting about key takeaways and findings, this report considers the progress of the bond program and the committee's work through December 2022. And we find that the bond work completed to date has progressed in a transparent and accountable way. All 6 bond programs are launched and are actively advancing investments in the region. Bond investments are ramping up, and bond programs anticipate even more activity, investments, and spend in calendar year 2023 and beyond. There has been over $42 million spent to date as of May 2023 to invest in the region's parks, trails, and natural areas. In 2022, that included 5 acquisitions in priority habitat across the region, including the Clackamas River Greenway, Sandy River, Lower Tualatin Headwaters, Beaver Creek, and Tonkin Oak Woodlands, and were identified as priority or Tier 1 acquisition opportunities building on the 11 acquisitions completed from 2020 through 2022 for a total of 386 acres. Significant progress on infrastructure improvements at Blue Lake Park to update key site infrastructure and to set the stage for further park updates and renovation. And this provided a great opportunity as a case study for us to consider the larger issues within the bond. So that was a really exciting meeting in particular. Significant progress on infrastructure, went there already. And finally, awarded funds to park providers across the region through the local share program, which in 2022 completed intergovernmental agreements with the Tualatin Hills Parks and Recreation District and the City of Tualatin for $6.8 million and 5 projects totaling $19.5 million in, council-funded bond grants for trail planning and construction projects. I'll hand it off to Bert now.
Thanks, Carrie. For the record, I'm Bert Edwards, and I use he, him pronouns. So as you know, this program sets out goals to ensure that investments are meaningfully invested in advancing community engagement, climate resilience, and racial equity. As an oversight committee, we've focused on working with Metro staff to understand, measure, and report on how bond programs are meeting these 3 criteria and ensure that taxpayer funds are being used responsibly. We know it's important to evaluate each investment, but also to understand how these investments overall are related and part of the system across the region. So as we've worked as a committee, we've looked for every land acquisition completed. We want to understand its impact related to strengthening the region's overall climate resilience and how it balances the growing portfolio of land acquisitions across Metro's acquisitions funded by this bond measure. For every bond-funded engagement activity, we want to know how community and public feedback has shaped the work. We want to know how individuals participating felt. We want to know how Metro can make ongoing community engagement sustainable. For projects funded by the local share program and grants, we want to understand, we want to know how is it improving access to nature in communities across the region. For projects that develop parks, for example, at Blue Lake Park, we really want to understand how infrastructure and accessibility improvements make Metro sites more inclusive, more welcoming, and more safe to residents and community members across the region. And lastly, for bond-funded projects, we really want to understand, we want to take a look at, and we've been asking questions on what's the economic impact of bond investments and contracts on communities, businesses, and workers, too often underrepresented in parks and nature-related industries. These are complex criteria, so determining the impact of program investments and advancing the bond's core criteria is going to take time. It's also going to require a large volume of investments to completely analyze. We've been working now for a couple of years as a committee, and what we've seen today on reporting from information from conversations with Metro staff demonstrates early and promising progress, advancing the board's core criteria. So more specifically, on community engagement, we reviewed how staff are continuing to utilize and employ some actually really innovative community engagement approaches to bond approaches around the Community Choice Program pilot, as well as other planned engagement activities. One example that we heard about and had a chance to really dig into was the Blue Lake renovation project, which is leveraging strategies to center BIPOC communities, to partner with community organizations to get the word out overall about engagement activities, and to try to reduce barriers to participation. On climate resilience, we've reviewed how individual land acquisitions completed in 2022 included factors that build overall regional climate resilience. For example, Metro's acquisition of 32 acres at the confluence of the Clackamas River and Deep Creek, located within the Clackamas River Scenic Waterway. This includes a 1/4 mile of stream banks on Deep Creek that have been protected, and nearly 1/2 mile along the Clackamas River on the high bluffs. On accessibility, committee members have heard from the Park ADA Transportation Project Manager about work underway to advance accessibility projects in Metro sites across the region. This included a discussion about pilot project at Graham Oaks and how community members are being engaged. We also heard from the manager at Blue Lake Park again, as noted, about planned work to create and refine a vision with community access, talking to community members about how they can have greater access to the lake and water, as well as places to gather and for family. So in a ways to balance both play and nature. And then lastly, on economic impact, through ongoing work with Metro staff, and the Oversight Committee has gained a deeper understanding, and Carrie sketched this out, and a deeper understanding of the bond spend, how it's measured, how it's projected, and how it's tracked. We've also looked at the costs needed to administer the bond. We've had a number of conversations as a committee with Metro staff about that. And we've also looked at the numbers for COVID participation for bond-funded contracts and projects. With that, we want to move into the committee recommendations, and Carrie and I want to tag team on the key recommendations. I'll just kind of quickly hit the recommendation as you'll see at the top line in the report, and then Carrie will kind of flesh out, because there was a lot of conversation with each of those. So our first recommendation that the committee has is that providing additional information on bond investments, the Oversight Committee will be key to allowing the committee to measure progress and impact year in and year out.
Yeah, so this includes maps of bond investments overlaid with relevant spatial data that feature opportunities for storytelling about individual investments and the entire portfolio of bond investments to date. This also includes anticipated milestones for bond investments and spend by fiscal year. For example, around administrative rate, what should be expected over the lifetime of the bond as opposed to early on and throughout the lifetime of the bond. Information and frameworks used to evaluate each potential land acquisition. This provides opportunity for alignment with the bond's climate resilience criteria, as well as additional case studies of bond-related community engagement activities, and more interviews and surveys with partners and community members to understand the impact of bond investments and to increase participation in community engagement activities.
So our second finding recommendation is that continuing to ensure information about bond programs and investments are accessible by all members of the public needs to remain a high priority for Metro. And we had a lot of conversations as a committee about that.
Yeah, so we appreciate the snapshots included in the 2022 staff report and the storytelling in the Parks and Nature annual report, as well as the bond online dashboard. We want to acknowledge the work of committee members who have been really focused on how community members would be able to find and access bond-related materials from Metro's website, and on how to best format materials for maximum readability and accessibility. We know that Metro still has work to do in these areas, and we'll keep working with staff to review maps, narrative materials, and other tools for the highest level of accessibility.
And for our last recommendation, I mentioned COVID, which stands for Oregon Certification Office for Business Inclusion and Diversity. Talk about a mouthful. And our last recommendation is the committee recommends that exploring the feasibility of a more nuanced analysis of COVID participation in bond investments and programs will allow for a better understanding both by the committee, but for the public as well, and also hopefully council, as far as the potential impact of bond investments and how that's really translating as far as the COVID targets and what both the public expects and council expects.
Yeah, so right now we have the overall figures of contract equity performance and COVID participation, but in the future, a more nuanced analysis would include disaggregation by race and gender identity and other ways of slicing and dicing the type of participation that we're seeing through public improvements, design, and other types of procurement activities. So we also want to review workforce diversity participation for bond-funded construction projects when that initial information is available in 2023 and beyond.
Okay, with that, Carrie will close this out.
That's right. So to date, the committee has identified additional topics to review in 2023 and beyond as a full committee and/or through our working groups. We may identify additional focal areas and topics as a result of this conversation with you all here today, and we hope to build on initial mapping to further analyze bond investments as connected systems and to measure progress on advancing accessibility and climate resilience through parks, trails, and natural areas across the region. We will review information on Metro's tribal government engagement related to the Parks and Nature Bond and conduct an analysis of acquisitions from the 2006 Natural Areas Bond to understand how 2019 acquisitions are comparing, especially related to the climate resilience factors. We will review evaluation of ongoing bond-related community engagement processes and projects And we look forward to connecting with one another at optional site visits and tours. With that, we look forward to hearing your comments, questions, and thoughts in response, and we're glad to continue this dialogue with you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Colleagues, I'm sure we all have questions, so let's go one at a time, please. Councilor Wong.
Great. Thank you, Deputy President Lewis, and thank you, Bert and Carrie, for your service and all the contributions and advice you've been giving Metro. I guess my question is, two of the common kind of critiques that we hear from the public are that it's taking a long time for funds to move out and make acquisitions, and that when we do kind of make acquisitions, that the public can't go and enjoy them. And I understand there's probably a lot of process that needs to be thought about, and just you kind of like revamping the whole way that Metro does business, in administering this bond. And I'm wondering about your perspective of, are we on the right track, and are we moving with enough urgency, and making sure that at some point, parks and green space are more available to our community members?
Great, thank you, Councilor Huang. I can speak to those questions, and perhaps Bert and/or Director Blasher will have more info to share. But as a member of the Finance Working Group, we had some in-depth discussions around administrative rate and overall bond spending. And this resulted in more conversations around how to manage those community expectations, because we know that there will be a greater spend on our administrative costs early on. And that was what ended up with our recommendations for those milestones that we can build so community has a better understanding of what to expect early on versus throughout the lifetime of the bond. And as far as community expectations in terms of how the space is used, we also had conversations around community education. Sometimes there is that conflation between local parks provider scope versus Metro scope. So parks and recreation as opposed to parks and natural areas. So we see a need for greater education and expectation setting within our community. So folks know that there are some spaces that are intended for community gathering, and there are other spaces that are intended for other purposes related to our climate resilience goals and habitat restoration, et cetera.
I'd just add from our conversations with the committee, I know I've been very impressed with the level of community engagement that Metro is coming at. I think it's a really impressive model that other governments kind of look to, and that work is hard, and to do it well takes a lot of time and energy, and I see the staff doing that. So as far as acquisitions, I think that will always add time, but I think that's key as far as accountability and legitimacy when you're making acquisitions. I think the other thing that we had to start to come up in conversations and something to think about is, and from my past had at Friends, which is also a land trust, and the real estate market is kind of crazy for those trying to make conservation purchases right now, and I think Metro's doing a really good job, particularly as far as thinking through when you're making purchases, particularly for climate resilience and purchasing natural areas. How do you do that in a way that it has the widest benefits for all of the community residents across the region? And I'm sure Director Blasher can really kind of jump in and flesh out a number of the things that Carrie and I noted.
Thank you. Thanks, Bert and Carrie. Thanks, Councilor Wong. I think you all said it really well. I think there's an opportunity to look at setting some of the milestones to help level set expectations and be transparent about that, provide the education and awareness, specifically when it comes to acquisition. Just a reminder, it's a willing seller program. So as much as we might be ready to go and hurry and rush, our potential partners might not be in that place and space. Macroeconomic factors, different families, it's a generational effort sometimes. And so we also are looking at different strategies to be more proactive in certain areas and places where we can be jumping on things that come to market, as well as building those long-term relationships. And then I think Bert touched on it really well when it comes to access to some of these natural areas and spaces. That's an opportunity for us to help define and refine what does access mean, because it means a lot of different things to different people, especially when you talk about what are the benefits of those investments. So we'll be looking at some more robust opportunities to help define what that looks like and remind folks that all of it is open to the public, it's public lands, public investments, and we want to make sure that when people go out there, they're able to have a safe and welcoming experience, and we're better set to do that in our nature parks, where we know we've done the time and energy to do the engagement, and in those natural areas, the focus really is first on habitat and making sure that the plants and animals can have a safe and welcoming experience for themselves too, as we have a very heavily developed region, and so, yeah, but thank you for that, we'll continue to look at those.
Yeah, I really appreciated, all the thought and energy that's going into community engagement and rethinking how we do contracting, so kudos for that. I think it does kind of slow a process down publicly, but I think it's well worth it. And I think it's like, how do we then communicate those kind of goals to our public? And just, being really thoughtful about, we're taking our time to do it right, and this is how we're doing it. But thanks for the great work.
Agreed. Thank you.
Counselor Simpson.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Thank you, Co-Chairs Waters and Edwards, for your dedication and service to this body, as well as the other 15 members. It's been really good to see you all at work in, one, expanding our naturehood, but also maintaining it. It's been, for me, the highlight of thinking forward in terms of how we protect our natural assets around the region so that we have something for future generations. I do want to point out, I'm a big COVID firm guy, and I love to see those numbers increase. I know we're at 38%. There's a lot of work to be done, and a lot of folks who do need to get to work that would fall under that status. So I'd love to, as you as a committee continue to oversee that, to really push on us and push on that fact that we need to increase those numbers. I also want to highlight the benefits of the trail program. It's something that's near and dear to me. I've been a part of the regional quarterly trails forum for a couple of years now. I know it's been around for a while, but these trails and these new projects that are coming online are really beneficial to community. They are also a part of a broader pedestrian and movement system where we allow folks to not only gain access and move into nature, but move safely through and around their region. So I really, really loved hearing that you all are intent on giving folks more access to these spaces. That's something I hear often, particularly in the district around Oxbow, Blue Lake, some of those bigger parks where you need auto dependency to get there. So kudos to you and your work. Again, push on us on those COVID firms and getting those numbers up. And I look forward to continuing to work with you all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Councilor Simpson. And on the COVID piece, I will also mention that the City of Portland recently adopted an ordinance that increased opportunity beyond those that might be certified through the state COVID office. And I would encourage Metro to consider something similar, because there may be firms that are otherwise COVID eligible, so BIPOC business enterprises, women business enterprises, and others that might not be COVID certified for whatever reason, but would otherwise be eligible and certified through the state of Washington, the National Minority Entrepreneurship Development Council, I think is the correct title of that organization, and other certifying agencies. So there might be even more participation that we just can't capture with the current model.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thank you.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Lewis, first of all, I want to thank the members of the committee, as well as the co-chairs, Waters and Edwards, for coming and making this presentation. It's a complex process, and they've done a lot of work and had to dig down into a lot of different things. And great work, as was pointed out by Councilor Simpson, on the COVID aspect and various other aspects. It's a work in progress. It's continuing. It's a complex process. I do have, and I think the comments that they made, as well as Mr. Blasher made, point out one thing. The bond does a lot of wonderful things, and it's purchased a lot of properties in terms of resilience. There is still a gap there I think we all realize this, in terms of not all of these facilities are equally accessible to all groups of the population. It's not something that the bond specifically, we can't buy buses and haul people out there, but it's something that we probably need to continue to think about and work about. I have one specific question, I guess, is, as you know, each of these purchases has a different lifespan, and some of them require a great deal. The Deep Creek one, for example, is going to require a great deal of work and restoration. Are we communicating enough with the communities, and specifically local as well as general, about the complexities of restoration before a site is really available or might be available for public access? Is there more that we should be doing in this regard? Because not everybody understands that restoration isn't just, you put in a road and let everybody go wander around. You have to it takes at least 3 years to get rid of blackberries. I know that for a fact.
If not longer. Yeah, agreed. Agreed, 100%. Yeah, I would love to hear more about what has been done, but I know that this has been a key issue that we have flagged as a committee is overall community messaging and expectation setting.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations about, there's a lot of great information and communications that the Metro staff are putting together in ways that they can surface that and make it more accessible to the public. And like the infographics they've worked on, I think are great. And I think this is another aspect of community engagement that we can think about as far as, because it builds those bonds with the community. So there might be businesses on the COVID side, for example, they might not have normally think that they would want to take a government contract. When you can make those ties, that might really make it visible that those are opportunities there. And the same thing even with acquisitions, and for people to understand stewardship. But even for community members that even think that maybe one day they have a piece of land and maybe they would want to sell it to Metro or another person, entity as far as for conservation hold. So just a different aspect of how community engagement can potentially help move us in some of the areas that you noted, Councilor Rosenthal, but let me hand it over to John.
Thank you. Thanks, Councilor Rosenthal. Yeah, I think your question was, are we communicating about the complexities? And I think part of your question is, are we communicating effectively? As we put out our annual report, we've got all sorts of things up on the website. And so I think that is an opportunity for us to dig in more of how are folks understanding the work that goes into this, what those impacts are in that time. And so I think as we continue to fulfill the bonds expectation around coming back to check on how effective our engagement processes have been, that's a place for us to continue to ask those questions of, are folks understanding how we're doing this work? Where can we be more transparent on sort of the journey that a potential piece of property takes as we invest time and energy in how we're trying to build linkages to have a larger anchor habitats rather than just small islands. So there's definitely some opportunities for us to look at how we communicate now and where there are ways to be more effective to reach different groups, whether it's through our Big Backyard publication, the annual report, the news stories that we have, the programs that we do through our community education stewardship, through our field guides that we have at our different sites, and and through our regular reporting out on bond and levy progress.
Yeah, and if I just might follow up with one maybe it's a comment and a question is, each site is very different. For example, in the Deep Creek site, for example, some of them will have long-term potential for recreation or access, and some of them will be primarily for resiliency. And I guess the question or the hope is that we're making that clear at the outset to the various communities that this site is the site that was purchased recently on the Tualatin River Basin is primarily a watershed protection. It's probably not going to be primarily for sort of human access, whereas some of them will be. And are we making this clear at the outset? I mean, are we doing an evaluation on each site as what its long-term purpose is going to be, and are we communicating that with the various communities, I guess?
I think as you know, when we have our memos that we send out to you for the different acquisitions, we go into the detail of what were the driving factors of that acquisition. But that is something that we could look at of how do we share that more explicitly out so folks understand when different properties are coming in and what has potential for long-term opportunity for more of a nature park opportunity versus what is going to be really designed specifically to be a habitat focus in terms of climate resilience and overall ecosystem health. So we can look at how we take those memos and the information that we provide council and where we might be able to incorporate those more into some storytelling more publicly.
Okay. Yeah, each site has its own unique story.
Indeed. And that was part of the process through the Protect and Restore Land program, where we went around to develop and take those 24 target areas and get a lot of community input, looking at a real heavy environmental justice lens as well, and really thinking about within these 24 target areas, what are some of the priorities that should be established? And so we can just kind of remind folks as well, here's where we got input of what to focus on in these different areas and when it was more about, whether it's riparian zone focus versus wetlands. And so we have some good information to bring back as, evergreen or refreshing stories of why we're doing what we're doing at the direction of council and the voters.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the details that are provided in the mapping tool, because it seems like that would be a really wonderful venue to have some information up top overall, and then as folks hover over the different acquisitions to get more of an understanding of the purpose behind each of them.
Great.
Wonderful. I guess I will close it out by, again, adding my thanks for all the work that you do, the committee does. I know that you've had a little bit of natural attrition, so I look forward to you being able to welcome some new folks as well, so we can continue to bring new people into the fold, represent every corner of the region on the committee, and again, eyes on with a diversity of perspectives and expertise, really rooted in community engagement, and frankly, more finance brains as well, because outside eyes there is what protects us for future endeavors. We know that parks and nature destinations in our communities really draw people from all over, and big nature close to home is kind of what we pride ourselves in, but at the same time, making sure that everybody can hope to walk, bike, or roll to a part of nature close by. And with each bond investment, parks and nature, we feel the ripple effects significantly even outside of those specific investments in geography. I'm glad to hear that the committee is focused. I am actually really interested in your comparison to 2006 in your work plan for next year. I think that'll help us answer some of the pressures and questions we're getting around pace. Also, the fact that you did your Blue Lake case study, I think that is just so indicative, something that seems so simple and straightforward, like better restrooms and water pipes that aren't old, really has a lot of complexity. I mean, I volunteer to go out there and help point to where I think restrooms should be and how big they should be, but you've got plenty of people who've already done that. I just want to emphasize the importance of this committee being active, eyes on, engaged. We have like 5 big buckets of programming, then we have all these little tiny specialty items. We've got participatory budgeting, we've got a couple of focus areas, and to have just all of you bring your own personal passions and ability to plug into all those means so much to us in leadership role and to our neighbors. So thank you to the department for preparing the report. Thank you to you all for taking time out of your busy day to be with us. And just pass on our thanks to the rest of your committee.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thank
you.
Thank you.
I get to move us along. Today's consent agenda now consists of 4 items. 4.1, which is Resolution 235341 for the purpose of adopting the Smith and Bybee Wetlands Natural Area Interim Plan. 4.2, consideration of the May 9, 23 council meeting minutes. 4.3, consideration of the May 11, 23 council meeting minutes. And 4.4, Resolution 235346 for the purpose of declaring certain property surplus and authorizing a lease of a portion of the Irving Street Garage. Do I have a motion, or would somebody like to say something?
Yes.
Thank you, Deputy President Lewis. I'd like to pull 4.4 resolution number 23-5346 for further conversation.
Great. So let us now look at our consent agenda as simply items 4.1 through 4.3. So the 2 sets of meeting minutes and the Smith Bybee Natural Area Plan. Do I have a motion on that reduced?
I
Yes.
so move to adopt.
Moved by Councilor. Do I have a second? Second by Councilor Simpson. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say nay. Great. 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3 all pass on the consent agenda. And I guess I'd like to bring up for an item right now, Resolution 235346, for discussion on the purpose of declaring property surplus in the Irving Street Garage.
Great. Yeah, I'd like to just have some further discussion on this item. I think for this, we're balancing kind of our our goals of fiscal responsibility and also supporting local small businesses, along with our stated climate goals. I am supportive of a lease because it does make fiscal sense in saving us, $40,000 of losses every year. But I do have some concerns around the usage that's kind of separate from the lease. I understand it's going to a auto dealership and kind of provides a couple hundred stalls for inventory and car sales, which also kind of perpetuates our society's reliance on single occupancy vehicles. And I noticed in the resolution that the revenues of a little over $1 million over the next 4 years could be used for a whole slate of activities, including other metro priorities. But I'd really like to have staff think about, given this kind of new revenue stream, what could be used towards advancing our climate and sustainability goals, and it might be deeper investment in, our RTO program or our climate work or, vehicle electrification. But it might be my hope that maybe staff could bring back, a plan for how those revenues could be used to mitigate kind of our climate impacts.
Great, thank you. Looks like we have staff here to maybe respond, or if we have any questions. That was more of a statement, but I do think, would it be possible for you to come back with a recommendation on how we spend these funds in compliance with some of our climate action items?
Absolutely, thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis. We do have Ryan Kinsella here from CAM if you have any additional questions about the lease. The revenue generated from this lease will go into our general fund, which is your most discretionary bucket of money that you have. While it is new revenue to us this year, I do just want to point out that we have had revenue from the garage in the past. It was fully, I guess not leased, but it was filled with cars, commuter cars, for many years before the pandemic. A lot of state employees who work down the street. Absolutely recognize the impact or the fact that having single occupancy cars parked there is a concern. But I do think that it is an improvement over where we were, because we are not seeing all those commuters anymore. Ryan, is there anything else that you want to say?
No, I think that's exactly right. We generated almost $800,000 in revenue per year pre-pandemic, and so in addition to the loss of that revenue, we're also incurring expenses for the biohazard cleanup that goes on, the washing the stairwells, vandalism and stuff that occurs in the garage, as it being just unoccupied currently.
Wonderful, thank you. And what is the timeline for returning with a menu or a recommendation for expenditure? This summer, fall?
Yep, I'm happy to come whenever it sort of syncs up with the next budget maybe amendment process. Could be a good time to timeline to sync up those, that decision making.
Does that work for you?
That sounds great.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion on 4.4.
So moved.
We haven't really read the title into it, so if you could just read the full title of the resolution before you ask for a motion.
Okay. I will entertain a motion on Resolution 235346 for the purpose of declaring a certain property surplus and authorizing a lease for a portion of the Irving Street garage.
So moved.
I'll second.
Wonderful. Motion by Counselor Simpson, second by Counselor Wong. Let's do roll call, please.
Sure. Thank you. Counselor Rosenthal.
Yay.
Counselor Simpson.
Yes.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis.
Aye. Unanimous support for that item, and we look forward to hearing some options on, or a recommendation on how we can spend that for climate.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So next in our agenda, we'll move on to resolutions. The first is Resolution 235337 for the purpose of distributing 18.8 million of the Carbon Reduction Program funds for years 22-26 pending inclusion in the 24 to 27 MTIP. And today, Ted Leopold, who serves as Metro's Resource Development Section Manager, and Grace Chow, who's our Senior Transportation Planner, will give the staff portion of the presentation.
Great. Thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis and members of the Metro Council. We are here today to ask for your approval of the allocation of $18.8 million of carbon reduction program funds. And I'm going to ask Grace Cho, our Senior Transportation Planner, to kick off a short presentation. We'll do a little tag team. I'll finish up, and then we'll turn it over to you for your action. If we could bring Grace up on the screen there. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Grace.
Next slide, please. To begin, a brief refresher on the carbon reduction program. The carbon reduction program is a new funding program created through the bipartisan infrastructure law, and it has the express purpose to reduce transportation emissions through the development of state carbon reduction strategies and fund projects designed to reduce transportation emissions. There are two federal requirements to access carbon reduction program funds. The first is that states need to develop a statewide carbon reduction plan, and that plan must be developed in conjunction with metropolitan planning organizations like Metro. And then the second is to use any remaining funding from after the statewide carbon reduction plan has been developed to fund projects and programs that emerge through that plan. I just want to note that in the creation of this new program, the state of Oregon is expected to receive approximately $82.5 million in total. Next slide, please. So in Oregon, we are fortunate that the state has developed a greenhouse gas emission reduction plan, also known as the statewide transportation strategy, which provides a starting point for meeting that first federal requirement. ODOT, as the lead, convened stakeholders, which included Metro and the other metropolitan planning organizations throughout the state, to go through an exercise in prioritizing which elements of the STS to focus the carbon reduction program funds. That led to the 4 key areas listed being prioritized, and that's around fuel and vehicle and fuel technology, transportation options, which includes transit, system and agency operations, and pricing. Lastly, ODOT acknowledged that there is a significant need in partnerships in implementing the statewide transportation strategy, including those 4 key areas identified in the carbon reduction program. Next slide, please. So when the bipartisan infrastructure law created the carbon reduction program, one aspect it mandated is that large metropolitan areas, including Metro, receive a direct sub-allocation of carbon reduction program funds. And ultimately, those metropolitan areas are able to allocate the funds to projects and programs in urban areas. For the Portland metropolitan region, that amount comes to approximately $18.8 million total in carbon reduction program funds. To help guide the allocation of carbon reduction program funds in the metro area, Metro relied on 2 policy directives. The first is the region's adopted climate smart strategy. Like ODOT, our region has already completed a major planning effort and adopted the climate smart strategy to meet state legislation around reducing greenhouse gases from land use and transportation sources. This was completed in the early 2010s. This new federal funding program, therefore, is ultimately an opportunity for us to implement the climate smart strategy, as they both share very clear purposes and intent. The second policy directive is really, as mentioned previously, that state carbon reduction strategy. Next slide, please. So just briefly, the framework that we utilized in regards to the climate smart strategy. Climate smart has 9 priority strategy areas to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from cars and light-duty trucks, ranging from implementing adopted land use plans to securing adequate funding for needed transportation investments. In review of those 9 key strategies, we know that ODOT is taking a lead role with their carbon reduction program to address one of these strategy areas, and that's related to Oregon's transition to cleaner and low carbon fuels. In our staff review of the 9 key strategy areas, transit, active transportation, and system management and operations were identified as kind of aligned as best fit, as well as having the greatest greenhouse gas emission reduction or carbon reduction potential. So they would ultimately serve as the focus for the carbon reduction program allocation in the metro area. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Ted to talk about our allocation process.
Great, thank you, Grace. So next slide, please. So we kicked off the process with Metro Council back in December of 2022, provided briefings at a council meeting or council work session last December, as well as with one-on-one meetings and with updates from your JPAC councilor members at work sessions, and through discussion with your council JPAC members at our preparatory JPAC meetings. The input we received was a direction to leverage previous planning work aimed at reducing emissions and to leverage additional funding opportunities. We also heard several specific project ideas that were taken into consideration. Next slide, please. That council input was supplemented with additional stakeholder input, which had similar content to what we heard from the council members. And this input was used along with the climate smart strategy investment policies Grace just described, and the federal carbon reduction program direction to develop specific investment package options for consideration. Next slide. So based on the funding eligibility, the policies, and the input, 5 investment package options were developed for consideration that TPAC and JPAC first heard in April. TPAC, our Transportation Policy Alternatives Committee, and JPAC, our Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. The input received at these meetings on those 5 additional package options led to a narrowing to 2 options at their next meetings that were distinguished between a $3 million investment in either active transportation projects or in what we call system management operations projects. The TPAC recommended the option with the system management operations component, though both options did receive support, and JPAC concurred and adopted the TPAC recommendation. Next slide, please. So just getting into the content of that recommendation, it includes $5 million of funding for both the 82nd Avenue and Tualatin Valley Highway Bus Rapid Transit projects. That $5 million to each project will be matched by TriMet and will include additional participation by local agencies towards a total of about $20 million needed for each of those projects to prepare to enter the Federal Transit Administration's New Starts program. So really getting into using these funds to leverage additional funds, federal funds, and implement bus rapid transit projects in those corridors. If the region decides not to pursue entering into a small starts application, any remaining funding could be used and repurposed for safe access to transit in those corridors. Third element is the McLaughlin Corridor Transit Signal Priority Project and serving the Line 33, TriMet Line 33 in that corridor. Transit Signal Priority has a next generation technology that's more sophisticated than how this has been done in the past, and was first implemented in this region with the Division Corridor Bus Rapid Transit Project, and really allows the signal timing to be optimized for progressing both buses and vehicles in that corridor, and uses more sophisticated technology to do so. So this would be the first time that TriMet would then be able to implement this outside of the Division Corridor project, which was really done as a part of that federal New Starts program funding, and done with limited partners in terms of the City of Portland and the City of Gresham. So they'll be able to expand how they work with other agencies such as Clackamas County, the Oregon Department of Transportation, in implementing this technology in the McLaughlin Corridor, in anticipation of them using and expanding this technology to other corridors in the state. The fourth element there is climate smart implementation. This is really providing resources to both Metro staff to promote the implementation of the climate smart strategy in other ways, and to provide us additional tools that will help the implementation of the climate smart strategy. And finally, the system and management and operations is a priority strategy for climate smart, and includes investments such as more efficient signal timing and traveler information. Next slide. So next steps, if Metro Council approves and adopts this today, is, as Grace mentioned earlier, we will still have coordination with the Oregon Department of Transportation and the rest of the state to package the submission to the United States Department of Transportation. And then, assuming that all is approved and moves forward, we will have to bring these individual allocations and program them into the Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program as they are ready to be programmed. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it back to you and answer any questions or entertain discussion and ask for your adoption. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Colleagues, some of us have seen this not enough times to give it ourselves, and some of this is new, so I want to give everybody an opportunity to ask questions, make sure we understand what's in front of us. Starting with Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Interim Chair Lewis, and I just have I'm going to support this, but I'm particularly skeptical of a bunch of things. A couple of them, particularly the 82nd and the TV highway, have the potential for having significant reductions. But I have not yet seen from the state or anybody a direct kind of correlation between between some of the administrative functions or some of the administrative improvements and the actual amount of greenhouse gas reductions. For example, if you go to electric buses, the signal improvements don't really do much, frankly. It works as long as you have diesel buses, so is it predicated on the fact that we're going to continue to have diesel buses and we have to have signal improvements so we have less stoppage time and less emissions from those things? I have not seen that from the state. I have not seen a clear definition of how this is really going to improve things. And then, although I understand it's very necessary to have adequate data, and it's sort of getting a little frustrating. Here we are 25 years into climate change and we're still talking about how we go about doing it. We don't actually have direct implications or direct climate reductions that we can see from any of these particular projects. It would be nice to say, this project, we're going to allocate it and we expect to see a 15% climate reduction or carbon reduction along this route, et cetera, et cetera. But so far it's just talk. So, I mean, I think it's necessary to move forward, but I remain relatively unsatisfied with the process.
Any response?
Go ahead.
I guess I do want to say the opportunity to base our work off of climate smart strategy means that we do have more of those tools at our disposal than I think any other jurisdiction. So I do think we are starting from a good spot. If you want to speak specifically to the research around signal timing and what we're doing when we're doing Better Bus and Better Bus Plus, and maybe that's something we all need a refresher on, but please respond.
Sure. So, yeah, I think I'd hit that in three ways. One is, in terms of the climate smart strategy, I think you were right, Councilor Rosenthal, that we had systematic level analysis that led to the identification of the priority investment types, and they were at systems level, and so the priority of improved and additional transit service as the top emission reduction strategy really was based on sort of regional modeling as opposed to individual project modeling. With regards to one of the investments in the climate smart implementation element, the $1.8 million, really is to get at additional tools so that we can get down to some project level analysis and be able to get that carbon reduction, a more specific estimate or forecast of that project level improvement. And then with regards to specifically the signal timing and the investment in the transit corridors themselves, even with electric buses, the reliability improvement and the travel time improvement provided by an investment in the signal timing not only is reducing the emission from the bus itself, but is also attracting more ridership. That's one way to really improve transit ridership, is to make sure your buses run on time so that people do have assurance that they will be able to get to their destination on time, and to improve the travel time through the corridor. So I think those are the ways I would sort of respond to. I don't know if there's additional things you were interested in me hitting on, Councilor Lewis.
I'll just comment that I appreciate that, and I understand that you have different levels, but I have not, in a lot of the presentations, I just don't see if we improve transit signal efficiency with diesel buses, we get X percent of reduction in climate emissions, and and some of it's due to the emissions and some of it's due to better ridership. But I haven't seen that really detailed. I've seen it talked about in sort of generalities, and I think that we should probably be to the point where we have a little bit more specifics on that at this point in time. But like I said, it's a process moving forward, and I support the fact that we're going to try and allocate this, and particularly, of course, I'm in favor of the TV highway project.
Great, thank you. And we also look forward to those improved tools with these investments as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Wong?
Thank you, Deputy President. I think these are all great ideas, and I do want to follow up on Councilor Rosenthal's line of questioning a bit. And I'm wondering, I guess, in the implementation framework, should we invest in these? Like, what is the evaluation process? Like once that funds have been allocated and are in implementation, how do we know that they're working? And is there something in the federal requirements where we're supposed to measure or evaluate in some way, how effective these are? And then we can, I'm guessing other MPOs across the country are going to be doing the same. So is there some process to figure out what's getting the most bang for the buck and, developing kind of best practices nationally that way?
Yeah, and I may have Grace jump in here as well. There is no, so in terms of reporting requirements, I think on a project by project basis, so several of the projects that we are funding here, particularly the 82nd Avenue Corridor Project and the TV Highway Project, when they go through their new starts process, they go through an extensive evaluation that's comprehensive to the entire transit investment, not just the emission reduction. And so there will be additional information developed specifically as the scope and detail of what that investment will actually be. They will get a better and better understanding of the benefits and impacts of that investment, including what emission reduction you are expected to achieve. So as those go through their process, and that process is administered here at Metro in partnership with TriMet, so you will be hearing about those as well. Programmatically, Grace, maybe you can jump in on requirements for reporting.
Thank you, Councilor Wong, for the question. I believe, as Ted has alluded to, the federal program did not require that. There did not have a reporting requirement as part of the implementation, or I guess the administration of the funding program, this new funding program within itself. There is not like a required emission reduction analysis that is come parallel to that. With that said, our Metropolitan Transportation Improvement Program, each cycle goes through an analysis process where we evaluate the package of investments as it relates to advancing how the package of investments advances the region towards our regional transportation plan goals and priority areas, one of which is around climate change. So we do an analysis. It's just not at the project level scale, which is what I hear is the desired level of analysis by this council.
Okay. Well, yeah, thanks for answering that. I mean, as a grant manager for, various projects, I know how tedious reporting can be, but it just seems like kind of an opportunity lost to not be able to do that nationally and kind of compare, effectiveness. But I guess that's just how the program is structured, and we'll move forward. And actually, just a quick technical question on the 82nd and TV Highway allocations. Are those eligible to use as our local match, or is that ineligible because it's federal dollars?
That's correct. It's in it, the actual carbon reduction program, federal dollars cannot be used as match to the federal dollars coming from the New Starts program, but any local dollars we spend, we can use it, that are supplemental to the $5 million can be used.
And does this investment catalyze additional local match? Like with local jurisdictions?
Yes, I don't, correct. So I don't know, so TriMet has already committed to match the $5 million dollar for dollar in both of those projects. I do not know the source. They have not identified yet the source, whether it's going to be federal dollars or local dollars that they use. And then there will be additional local dollars needed from other agencies to fully fund the work that's needed to get them to enter into the New Starts program.
Okay, great, thank you. And thanks for the work all the committees have made.
Yeah, thank you.
Next question, Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, Deputy Council President. Lewis, almost got you, Peterson, sorry. I really, more of a comment. Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Grace, for the work you put into this program. I know it's pretty hard and challenging to get it through two bodies like TPAC and JPAC, and getting that feedback and response. And I'll say this, last week, at least two of those projects were something we stomped hard for on the Hill, and that's TV Highway and 82nd Avenue, for a lot of reasons. But I just want to extend my thank you to the work that you brought to this space, you and Grace. And I love seeing that we are leveraging these dollars with other dollars so that we can have a larger project. And echoing a little bit of Councilor Rosenthal and Councilor Wong, it'd be great to get some big outcomes or measure those outcomes. I think that we often forget that this region leads the nation sometimes in how we do things in terms of transit and pedestrian scale activity. And it'd be great for us to also have a step forward in showing other jurisdictions how we can best do that. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the kind words. Thank you very much. And yeah, I think as we look at that investment in the carbon strategy dollars in terms of the tools and the resources that's going to bring, I hope that we will be able to answer some of these questions and be able to provide that kind of information that we can use to articulate what it is these benefits are that we're hoping to achieve. Thank you.
And I'm going to add my thanks, in particular, Ted and Grace for shepherding the process, but also to the rest of the staff that do the work at TPAC. We offered up an initial menu that was really visionary, and I want to stand by the work that was done to make sure that we were being a little provocative, in particular, by offering up a potential package of e-bikes, particularly for marginalized communities, to make sure that our short and mid-distance trips can start to get converted out of single occupancy vehicles. But the TPAC folks moved us into more actionable, concrete next steps forward, which I do appreciate. That is kind of the role of our jurisdictional staff to make sure things are actionable. But at the political level, I think you've heard us today say we want more concrete measures. But I'm also going to say in the future, I hope that we can win the battle at TPAC to take some risks, particularly towards innovation and towards electrification in our communities. The opportunity to have this be a consensus product was there. I don't think we got full support at JPAC, but it was close. So I look forward to seeing kind of the next steps, and if we deliver well, hopefully getting more money from the federal package. Everything I say there
Thank you.
correct? Or did
Yes,
I miss,
absolutely.
I didn't
Yeah.
mess up anybody.
No, that's great, thank you.
So with that, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Counselor Simpson with second from Counselor Rosenthal. Any further discussion?
And a third from McCall.
Yeah, McCall's there. He's got a lot to say today. He's got 5 teeth now, it's too many. Connor, could you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis.
Aye. Wonderful, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gonna wrap up that agenda item, and while we are just blazing through, we have a really long agenda today, let's keep moving. Resolution number 235331 for the purpose of adopting guiding principles of meaningful public engagement. We reviewed this just a few weeks ago on May 30th, and we gave staff direction to help update the principles of citizen involvement that were last adopted in 1997. And today, I believe we're going to have a short presentation, particularly focused on the values conversation we had last time. So Metro's Community Engagement Lead, Gloria Pinzon, I will turn it over to you. Are you in the sky? Yep.
I am here. Thank you. I am here. I'm joined with Kimberly Abels, our Strategic and Crisis Communications Manager, and she's going to kick us off today.
Thank you, Gloria. Good morning, Deputy Council President Lewis and Metro Councilors. My name is Kimberly Abels. I use she, her pronouns, and I manage the Strategic and Crisis Communications team that works at the center of the agency. My team is made up of a variety of strategists who work on different agency processes, and one of them is overseeing the development of the new public engagement guide. As Councilor Lewis noted, I'm here today with Gloria Pinzon-Marin, who was our new Principal Community Engagement Lead, and she's leading this work. We're here today to provide an update about the guiding principles for meaningful public engagement and the Public Engagement Guide. As you may recall, the first step in our process to update the Public Engagement Guide is to refresh the guiding principles and bring them up to current best practices and make sure they reflect Metro's values as well as your direction. We're excited to have this opportunity over the next few months to work with you to craft a Public Engagement Guide that serves you well as policymakers and reflects the commitment to keeping our promises and building back better. This project offers the chance to apply what we've learned in the last decade to a new set of shared principles and practices that helps us build public trust and increase public participation in Metro Council decisions. I'd like to pass it over to Gloria to talk a little bit more about the process and the principles in some more specificity.
Thank you, Kimberly. My name is Gloria Pinzon. I use she and they pronouns. And good morning, councilors. I want to start by thanking you for your energy and contributions to this project so far. And I also want to thank the project and steering team members, many staff advisors across Metro, and community members who have contributed their ideas, questions, and needs to this project so far. Excuse me. At our May 30th presentation with you, we provided an overview of the different ways Metro connects with the public, an overview of the Public Engagement Guide project, and how we came up with the draft guiding principles up to this point. I'll provide a short project overview today, and then talk about the feedback that we received and how we applied it. The updated guide will account for the different ways of interaction that we have with the public across departments, but we'll be focusing on strengthening guidance on inclusion practices related to decision-making processes and equitable engagement practices like accessibility, engagement with cultural or language-specific groups, and will include guidance around urban indigenous outreach and tribal government consultation. Next slide, please. The full guide was last updated 10 years ago, and we're working towards an adoption of winter of 2023 for the updated guide. As the region's metropolitan planning organization, we are required to have a guide that informs the public in an accessible way about our regional transportation work. However, the guide will include information about and for all departments to use. Our intention is that the guide becomes a tool for members of the public to supplement staff's relationship building efforts and for Metro staff and Metro Council. We hope that it will strengthen our engagement practices and ensure we're supporting you as policymakers to make informed decisions. We have the opportunity in this process to continue our work towards restoration of past harms and accountability to the people we serve, and to create more shared understanding about engagement terminology that we use and best practices for inclusive and meaningful public and community engagement. There is a lot of important content and topics that we will need to consider in this process, but there will need to be prioritization and a plan for any topics that require more time to explore and develop content for me. We do expect to be able to review the guide every 3 years to ensure it's responsive to changes over time. During this process, we may also hear about challenges or barriers or issues that we cannot solve through the content in the guide, and we'll need to discuss those further with you. Next slide, please. This slide shows a couple of key terms to keep in mind. As we built the guiding principles, we worked under the assumption that meaningful public engagement can impact decision-making, is inclusive of all potentially impacted perspectives, is relationship-based, and responsive and considerate of the communication and engagement needs of the participants. Next slide, please. There have been a few drafts of the guiding principles up to this point. Besides the Metro Council, we did receive input from engagement professionals at Metro, the steering team members, Public Engagement Review Committee, and Committee on Racial Equity. That includes community members and county staff across the Metro region. This is the final list of 8 guiding principles for meaningful public engagement for your consideration and adoption today. And we will skip the reading of each individual principle today, but I will point out that there was one change to principle number 2, focused on transparency, and that was in response to one of Councillor Huang's comments about the importance of following up with participants after a process is ended, to ensure that participants know how their input was made and what the outcomes of the project were. There has been helpful guidance from this body and staff and key committees at Metro to inform this guide. And I think that moving forward, the development of the guide will provide an opportunity to delve deeper into the specifics of how we can meet the needs of our diverse audiences and apply the principles in our engagement work, applying that feedback. Next slide, please. Slide 5 shows some of the main points we heard from you at the May 30th work session. I also listed the principles that I feel most related to the comments to show how these could be addressed or applied in the guide in the future. I'll highlight a few of those points in the next couple of slides. First, Councillor Huang called for us to consider engagement activities as an opportunity to build civic leadership among participants, which relates to principle number 5, especially focused on capacity building. Applying this practice can support people in feeling more welcome and prepared to participate in Metro's programs, policies, and other opportunities beyond projects. The Council President also wants us to ensure that staff makes space to keep interested parties informed. For example, larger businesses in our region, even if this falls outside of department key audiences for specific projects. Next slide, please. This next slide shows a couple more comments, or the same comments, but organized in a different way so that we can explore them more in depth. So in the first row of the table, we list ways that we can be responsive to unique community needs and expand engagement opportunities beyond legacy committees or meeting at the Metro Regional Center, which relates to several comments made from multiple counselors. For example, community or neighborhood-based engagement can help meet people in a place that is familiar and comfortable to them. I'm interested in exploring opportunities to engage in the community outside of specific projects that have fixed timelines to support relationship building. And making sure that we consider specific needs like language, ability, cultural practices, or technology is also important when planning engagement activities for key audiences. Doing this can help create welcoming and inclusive spaces and increase public participation over time. This approach works best when supported by project managers working closely with engagement professionals, leadership commitment to the engagement process, and having adaptive timelines for projects that are responsive to new information learned along the way. Council President Peterson is also interested in setting minimum expectations for all projects in terms of engagement. This is part of the second row on the table. This is in part to ensure we keep interested parties, including big businesses in our community, informed about our work. And I believe that we would benefit from exploring the implications of this further with department leads, engagement practitioners, and our central communications team. As I thought about this idea, I imagine that minimum requirements could look a lot of different ways. For example, it could apply to how we use communication tools or what communication tools we use. It could apply to engagement tactics or to the process of developing and implementing engagement plans. Having clear goals is really helpful. Having steps to follow can be helpful as well. But in some cases, I've heard that it could also be restrictive, depending on the context. We do have communication tools at our disposal, like our website, subscribers' email list, social media, tabling, and online survey or mapping tools with support from our Data Resource Center. We also often tap into our local government or CBO partners to help us share out information that's relevant to their members or their communities. As we've talked about before, departments at Metro have different staffing structures, needs, and legal requirements to meet with their work. I want to learn more about how folks across the departments make decisions on engagement work and communications in order to be more responsive to this request. The implementation of the guide can build more consistency in many practices and approaches for engagement and communications while being flexible to each project, including the potential need for either shorter or longer timelines. And in many cases, I do believe we'll have to look beyond the guide itself into our processes or structure. Overall, I want to make sure that engagement or outreach work is planned meaningfully to make the best use of resources and participant time. I'd be concerned about requiring additional work for extended timelines for projects that don't need a robust engagement process, for example. I am hopeful that in the next few months, we'll have an opportunity to explore this topic further and address council concerns. But I do feel that we're also prepared to address some of these things through evaluating how we use our existing tools like our website and other outreach efforts. And in closing, I just want to ask that as you consider the new guiding principles for meaningful engagement, I invite you to imagine a future where you as leaders of this organization have a deeper understanding about the needs of the diverse communities and perspectives of the people that you serve within your districts and across the region, and to consider what it is that you might need to make informed decisions. With that concludes my presentation. And the previous slide is the one with the guiding principles if we wanted to go back to it. 2 slides back. Thank you.
Colleagues, any questions? I'm not seeing any Counselor Wong?
Great. Thank you, Deputy President Lewis. And I just want to express my appreciation to Gloria and Kimberly and the whole team for putting these together and really modeling actually great community engagement. I really see that you took our feedback and incorporated it into this version. So yeah, really pleased with that and great work.
Wonderful. Counselor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also want to express my appreciation of the work that's gone into it. I think it's time to, it certainly is time to update our public participation, our community participation, and I appreciate the fact that they listened very carefully to the input from Metro Council. You know, one thing that's implied in this, which is maybe not as specific as some people realize, is that one of the first elements in any community engagement process is to identify what communities we're talking about and what their specific characteristics are. And I think that that's important. I keep thinking if this was, we were doing this 20 years ago in Eugene, we'd have to identify the logging communities in the small towns as specific communities that had culturally distinct characteristics that we would have to learn to talk differently to, for example. The only suggestion I have, and I have one suggestion, is that in number 5, which I think is good, I'm just wondering if it would help at some point to add the term culturally distinct. There are maybe communities that are culturally distinct that are not particularly, you know, that maybe have been discriminated against in the past or not talked to particularly, but we have a lot of culturally distinct communities in this area, and some of them are specifically impacted, and I'm just wondering if that's a consideration that might be thought of. So, but otherwise, I think it's a very good process and a good listening, and I appreciate the staff's work on this.
Great. Any other comments? Counselor, it doesn't sound like we're going to be able to resolve your question on number 5 before we vote today. Are you comfortable with that?
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
Okay. Okay, so I will entertain a motion on this resolution, 235331, for the purpose of adopting guiding principles of meaningful public engagement.
Oh, I'll move.
And is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. We've had a motion by Counselor Wong with a second from Counselor Simpson. Any further discussion? Connor, could you please call roll?
Thank you. Counselor Rosenthal.
Yay.
Counselor Wong. Counselor Wong.
Aye.
Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis.
Aye. Passes with unanimous support. Thank you for the good work. Thank you for the quick response to our discussion from several weeks ago. And staff, your excellent presentation, making all of this very clear. Counselor Simpson and I had the opportunity to meet last week at the DOT, where they are anxiously awaiting this document. So I'm glad that we're keeping it on track for their deadlines. Moving forward, next is our agenda item 5.3, Resolution 235330, for the purpose of amending fiscal year 22-23 budget and the appropriation schedule and FY 22-23 through FY 26-27 capital improvement plan to provide for changes in our operations. Cinnamon Williams, our financial planning director, will present for staff.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis and members of Metro Council. Yes, I am Cinnamon Williams, your financial planning director, using she, her pronouns. Yes, the resolution today before you is amending this year's budget. So I just want to make sure that we understand the difference between the next agenda item that you have, which is about adopting next year's budget. So this is about that amendment. Next slide, please. All right, so I just really wanted, this is the last budget, of course, amendment. We've only got a couple more weeks to this fiscal year, but this is the last budget amendment for the year, and it's usually pretty small. This is all about the items that we didn't think of during the year. And so you can see this list of budget amendments. You can see that a lot of them are referencing items that you probably are very well aware of that we just are getting into the last of the year. So we're going to go over those items in front, which are the refunding bond fees, the Glendiver Golf Course, the Bybee Wetlands, Oregon Zoo Transfer, and the Arlene Schnitzer Cooling Tower and Capital Improvement Plan amendments. And again, like I would like to say, this is a pretty small budget amendment. Next slide, please. So we have an amendment for the issuance fees for the debt service that was, debt issuance that was issued in May. So we just have some debt issuance fees that are impacting this fiscal year, and we weren't planning on that, so we have a $100,000 proposed amendment for that. Next slide, please. And then the Glendiver Golf Course, as you're probably pretty well aware, we've had a couple of dry months, which means the golfers like to golf. And so we have an additional amount of revenue, and there's variable costs associated with that. So we need to increase our appropriations to cover those variable costs with the additional golf revenue. Next slide, please. So Smith and Bybee always has some restoration projects happening. It is a very small fund and a very small budget. So they had additional work that needed to get done, so they are transferring from their contingency at $17,500 to cover those restoration projects that they've got out there. Next slide, please. And the Oregon Zoo is actually moving $1.1 million from their operating fund into their capital asset fund to cover their capital costs that they have on their CIP. So this is that amendment. Next slide, please. And then the Merck Fund, they are also transferring $400,000 from their contingency to pay for the Arlene Schnitzer Cooling Tower Placement Project, which I'm pretty sure you guys are very well aware of what's happening there. So next slide, please. So this is the summary of those are the actual appropriation changes. We have an additional $100,000 for the debt, the General Obligation Debt Service Fund, an additional $400,000 for the General Fund, which is for the Glendiver project, and then the Oregon Zoo Asset Management Fund is increasing their appropriation by that $1.1 million because of the transfer of resources to be used. Next slide, please. All right, the Capital Improvement Plan amendments. Again, Portland 5's CIP is changing for the Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall Cooling Tower replacement. So they're using that $400,000 to help start working on that cooling tower. And then the Oregon Zoo is going to use that $1.1 million for that boardwalk resurfacing project. And then Waste Prevention Environmental Services actually really doesn't have any dollar change. They put in a wrong project number, so we're just making that change to the right project number to make that okay. It was off by 1 digit. So that's a technical change just to make sure we have the right project number associated with the project. Next slide, please. And that is it. So I am here to answer any of your questions. I do have finance managers either virtually or in attendance here for any particular questions as well.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilor Wong, first question.
Oh, great. Great. Thank you all for great work. These all seem important and necessary. Just on the cooling tower, I see that that's coming from a contingency fund. And I'm wondering, is that the full amount for replacement? Or?
No, that's just for this year's spending. So we're starting next fiscal year as 7/1 July, and so they are going to be using funds for next year. But this is just for the amount of funds that they have to spend in this month. I should put it that way.
What was the total replacement cost?
That I wouldn't know. Let's see if I could, I think Will Norris should be virtually on. Is Will Norris? Connor, do you see him there? Okay.
Oh, I mean, it's okay.
Oh,
You can.
Brian knows off the top of his head.
Curiosity, so you can let me know later.
Is this on? Councilor Wong, I think the answer is we don't know yet.
That's fair.
They're still doing work to figure out exactly what the solution is. But as Cinnamon noted, we needed appropriation in the current year for the work they're doing.
And how large is that contingency fund at the Schnitz?
So the contingency is the overall fund balance. I believe we're over $10 million.
in the current fiscal year. I don't have the exact number off the top of my head.
They do have a healthy contingency, though, at this point.
Great. So then we're confident in our ability to pay for a new cooling tower in the coming years?
Well, Councilor Wong, I think that is the question right now. Staff are in the process of scoping out exactly the magnitude of that replacement, and I think it's our anticipation that there will need to be financial support from the property owner, the city of Portland, in order to make that project, to get that done, because we expect the cost to be substantial.
And does this cover part of the temporary solution? Is that what it's going towards right now? Or is this like design and stuff like that?
I suspect this is probably primarily related to the temporary solution. And then it may include some expenditure on the beginnings of the project. But again, staff are kind of in the early stages of scoping out exactly what that project is gonna be.
Thank you.
Following up on that line of questioning and kind of the broader, I think, conversations that have even elevated to the media, Marisa, I would love to work with you and Steve Folstack to maybe do a deeper dive on cooling tower in particular, once we know a little bit more, if we're gonna be working with City of Portland to share those costs, because it is not all operational. If I use my non-technical terms, I think that there is some of this that is gonna be political in what the city covers versus us. So can we do that in the future?
Thank you for that question, Deputy President. I think also worth noting is that part of Steve and P5's work over the next year or so is going to be clarifying once and for all, which expenditures belong to whom. These are City of Portland facilities. We do Metro does pay for some maintenance of those facilities, but when there's a major capital project, I think we could use some clarification to reduce the amount of time debating between Metro and the city about how much, each entity should pay. This is clearly a major capital project that needs investment, and absolutely look forward to that conversation with you all.
Great, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. Yeah, this is sort of the same question, that Councilor Huang asked, but in a slightly different way. I understand that we have these expenses we have to pay for, and we have to add them into the budget right now. We had anticipated, if I remember, that the whole cooling system would be replaced 4 or 5 years from now. So we hadn't estimated into this budget. Does this mean that at some point, maybe in the next 3, 4, 6 months, we're going to have to add something to this budget? Because I don't think this interim system is going to be good for 5 years. I mean, we can't postpone doing the overall thing. So at some point, either midway through this year, or maybe the start of next year, we're gonna have a budget item that's going to address the entire fix. Is that correct?
Yes, Councilor Rosenthal, I would expect either a mid-year amendment next year, amending the 23-24 budget, or depending on the project timing, you might see it as part of the budget process for fiscal year 24-25.
Thank you.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. So if we could have a motion, please, on 23-5330 for the purpose of amending FY 22-23 budget and appropriation schedule and the 22-23 through 26-27 CIP.
I move the adoption of resolution 5330.
Got a motion on the table from Councilor Rosenthal. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. And a second from Councilor Wong. Can I please have roll call, Connor?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Simpson. Aye. Councilor Wong.
Aye.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis.
Aye. Unanimous support on that agenda item. Thank you. Thank you, staff, for the nice preparation. So next I'm gonna move us to resolutions, and it's first reading and public hearing of resolution 22-5333 for the purpose of adopting the annual budget for FY 23-24 making appropriations and levying ad valorem taxes. Marisa Madrigal, our Chief Operating Officer, and Brian Kennedy, still up here as our CFO, are going to present the staff report.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis. I am Brian Kennedy, the Chief Financial Officer for Metro. I use he, him pronouns. If we could bring the presentation up, thank you. One note, so today's action is a little bit unusual. We don't typically have a first read and second read of resolutions. The reason we do that is to give council the opportunity to amend that resolution prior to considering it next week. And that consideration is for amendments to the budget that happened between the approved and proposed, or approved and adopted phase, and then the addition of councilor budget notes. So that is what we are asking you to take action on today in anticipation of adopting the budget next week. Next slide, please. So as a reminder, the budget amendments that you'll be considering today, we discussed them on Tuesday at council work session. There have been no changes since that conversation. So that budget amendment includes 18.2 FTE increase, almost all of those related to our housing department. It's an overall $5.3 million appropriation increase to the budget. And then there are some small changes to the capital improvement plan related to information technology and parks and nature. Next slide, please. We also discussed budget notes on Tuesday. So the changes that are before you include some updates to those budget notes from the council work session. So there were changes made to budget notes 1 and 4 based on the conversation. And then we added budget notes 5, 6, and 7 with some small clarifications that were made after the meeting just to make the language a little more clear. Next slide, please. So the change to the first budget note just references that there is an associated budget amendment and that the action requested in the budget note has been incorporated into the fiscal year 24 adopted budget once adopted by council. The change to budget note number 4 adds the unincorporated areas and community planning organizations language that was requested, and then removes a suggestion to allocate a quarter FTE in the first year to address the proposal. Next slide, please. The last set of changes is adding budget notes 5, 6, and 7 that were presented by the council president at the meeting on Tuesday. They are substantially similar to what was presented to the council, just with some small clarifications indicating when staff will return and with kind of what information as directed by council. Next slide, please.
Can I ask for a pause? Councilor Rosenthal, is your hand up for the question now?
Yes, I had a question, and particularly I forget which budget note it was. There was, one of the budget notes had to do with financial viability of small communities. And in discussion with President Peterson, the wording just said small communities, communities in Western Washington, in Washington County, Western Washington County, and didn't specify specifically with, although her intent was to include only those communities within the metro jurisdiction. And I'm just wondering if that wording got added, because there are some communities that are, that are obviously of interest going on right now, but that are not part of the metro thing. And I just was wondering if that clarification got added.
Councilor Rosenthal, we did not make any change to that language. I do think in the language that directs staff to bring back a project plan, that would be an opportunity for council at that point to kind of clarify staff direction prior to engaging in the project.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, because I think that needs to be made clear that although the wording was not specific, it could be it needs to be interpreted according to what metro jurisdiction involves. Thank you.
Thanks for pausing for that question. Let's keep going.
Of course. I believe that is our final slide, but next slide, just to be sure. That is it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Colleagues, any questions beyond the one just asked? Okay. Seeing no further questions or discussion, I'm going to ask that we move into consideration of our amendments and budget notes. We will first vote on the budget amendments and then separately vote on budget notes. So I would entertain a motion that would probably sound a lot like moving to include the proposed amendments in the annual budget for fiscal year 23-24.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
So moved by Counselor Simpson, second from Counselor Rosenthal. Any further discussion? Connor, could you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Wong?
Yes.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Yep.
Counselor Simpson?
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis?
Aye. Motion passes unanimous support. I will move now to include the proposed budget notes in the annual budget for fiscal year 23-24. Is there a second?
Second.
Wonderful. So I made the motion and Counselor Rosenthal seconded. Is there further discussion of budget notes? Connor, could you please call roll?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Simpson?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Counselor Wong?
Yes.
And Deputy Council President Lewis?
Aye. Wonderful. So we have now moved forward with our amendments and notes into the budget. So next on our agenda is to hold a public hearing on Resolution 235333 for the purpose of adopting our annual budget for fiscal year 23-24, making appropriations and levying ad valorem taxes as amended. I'm going to open the public hearing on Resolution 235333. Connor, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for public hearing?
Yes, thank you. If anyone wishes to testify on resolution number 23-5333, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage a timer to go off at that 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us in person, you can fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up now by raising your hand. Depending on your version of Zoom, the raise hand button is at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, I will wait for some hands to go up. Councilors, we have not had anybody sign up in advance to testify on this item today. I don't see anybody in the room rushing forward, and I don't see any hands going up on Zoom.
Seeing no one raising their hands, I'm going to close the public hearing. And I'm going to move us along to our final agenda items. We're moving over to ordinances now. So first reading and public hearing on 23-1495 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District boundary approximately 4.86 acres located in Tigard on the west side of Southwest 150th Avenue. Thank you, budget staff. So I guess I would like to ask Carrie McLaren, our Metro Attorney, to please read the procedural requirements for this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Council President Lewis. Because this annexation involves a land use application that requires a quasi-judicial hearing, there are additional procedural requirements that must be addressed. First, council members must declare a conflict of interest or ex parte contact prior to the staff presentation. If a councilor has a conflict of interest, they are not allowed to participate in the council discussion or vote on that application. If a councilor has had an ex parte contact, they must declare the substance of it on the record, and it is subject to rebuttal. Discussions with Metro staff are not considered ex parte contacts. Councilors will be asked to declare any conflict of interest or an ex parte contact after I describe additional procedural requirements. For quasi-judicial hearings of this type, Oregon land use statutes require that we provide the following statement of required procedures. First, under section 3.09.070 of the Metro Code, this type of annexation into the Metro District boundary must be initiated by petition, which must be reviewed and acted upon by the council following a public hearing. Public testimony at this hearing should only address the applicable review criteria. The approval criteria are set forth in section 3.09.070 of the Metro Code and are more specifically identified in the staff report, which is part of the packet of materials before the council. The decision of the council is final, although it can be challenged by filing a notice of intent to appeal with the Land Use Board of Appeals within 21 days of the final decision. If any person fails to raise an issue in person during the hearing or by letter, or fails to provide sufficient evidence to allow the council to respond to an issue, that issue may not be the basis for an appeal to LUBA. failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to give the council an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court under ORS 197.796. I'll close with the hearing procedures. First, Metro staff will present a short report. The staff report will describe the proposal, identify the applicable approval criteria, and summarize the staff recommendation. The applicant may then make a presentation in support of their application, and following the applicant's presentation, other persons in support of the application will be given an opportunity to speak. If there are any opponents of the application, they will then have the opportunity to speak, and the applicant may then rebut any testimony from opponents. After that conclusion, public testimony will be closed. And after the record is closed to all parties, council members may discuss the request and ask questions of staff. A council vote will not be held until after the second reading. This hearing is part of the official record. In your testimony, please speak specifically about this application and how the criteria relate to the request. Please submit a copy of any written testimony, and it will be maintained as part of the record. And that concludes my comments.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So as a reminder, the case matter being reviewed is proposed ordinance 23-1495 for the purpose of annexing Metro District boundary, approximately 4.86 acres located in Tigard on the west side of 150th Avenue. And do any members of this council have ex parte contacts to disclose?
No.
See no's there. Does anybody have a conflict of interest to declare?
No.
No. I will now call on Glenn Hamburg, our regional planner, to introduce ordinance.
Good afternoon, Deputy Council President Lewis, councilors. I am Glenn Hamburg, Associate Regional Planner, and I use he, him pronouns. As summarized, this hearing is for an ordinance which, if it's adopted, would annex to the Metro District boundary approximately 4.86 acres located in Tigard. The subject territory is in Council District 3, and as noted, it's located on the west side of Southwest 150th Avenue, north of Beef Bend Road, and it's adjacent to some existing urban development, specifically some low-density residential subdivisions. So while the territory is already in the urban growth boundary, it's been annexed to the city of Tigard already, and has been approved by the city for urban residential development. The territory, as you know, must also be annexed to the Metro District boundary before that development can occur. So that's why we're here. It's important for me, though, to recite, at least for the public, the criteria for annexation to the Metro District boundary, which are that, 1, the territory be in the UGB, 2, the territory be subject to measures that prevent its urbanization until it's annexed to a city or to necessary service districts that will provide the urban services to the development. And 3, that the proposal be consistent with any applicable cooperative or urban service agreements that are adopted pursuant to statute and any concept plan. So as outlined in the staff report, this particular application meets all of that criteria. Specifically, the territory was included in the UGB in 2002 with the adoption of Metro Ordinance 02-969B. The territory was already annexed to the city of Tigard under local file number ZCA 2012-00003. So it's no longer on the land use jurisdiction of Washington County or in any concept plan. There has already been a zoning designation applied to the territory by the city for urban residential uses consistent with the city's adopted comprehensive plan. And just to note that urban services for the territory's prospective development will be provided by the city and by Clean Water Services. Any development of the property will need to comply with the city's already adopted land use regulations. As is normal here, the owners of the subject territory have consented to this annexation. Notice of the proposal was published in the Oregonian, posted on site on a very hot day, and mailed to owners of nearby property and to other interested parties. We've received no written comments either for or against the proposal, and we've not received any calls. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the ordinance number 23-1495.
Thank you so much, Glenn. Are there questions, colleagues?
Just one quick question, Glenn. This is adjoins the recent UGB land exchange. Is it contiguous with portions of that?
Not quite, although it's close. It's only in a portion of the UGB that was added about 20 years ago. It's, I would just off the top of my head guess, a mile north of the city of King City's urban growth boundary expansion. It's not directly adjacent to the area that was recently added to the UGB through the exchange process.
Oh, okay, it's not, okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. I'm tempted to ask how hot it was when you had to go out there for posting. That doesn't need to be
Sticks
on
in
the
my
record.
brain, yeah. It's like, that was a really hot day.
Connor, I think it's time for us to move on to public hearing. So I'm gonna open public hearing on ordinance 23-1495. And would you please describe our procedures?
Yes, thank you. So if anyone wishes to testify on ordinance number 23-1495, now is the time to do so. Public testimony will be limited to 3 minutes, and I'll manage the timer to go off at the 3-minute mark. If you've not already signed up to speak, you can do so now. If you're joining us in person, you can fill out one of the blue cards in the back of the room and bring that up to me. If you're joining us on Zoom, you can sign up by hitting the raise hand button. Depending on your version of Zoom, the raise hand button is either at the bottom of your screen or within the reactions tab. And as a reminder to everybody testifying today, you do not need to give your physical address. However, please do identify yourself for the record before testifying. So with that, I will look at some hands. And I do see one hand that has gone up. So we have Matt Wellner. So Matt, I'll go ahead and promote you up to a full panelist where you'll be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself. So if you go ahead and accept that promotion. Hi there, Matt. You should be able to turn on your camera and unmute yourself now. You'll have 3 minutes to testify, and your time will begin when you begin speaking.
Good morning, Councilor. My name is Matt Wellner. I am not going to take 3 minutes. I'll just take just a few seconds. I am the property owner. I represent the property owner and am one of the property owners. Was actually surprised to find out we weren't in Metro's jurisdiction, given that we're in the city. And so we contacted Glenn, and he's been very helpful. I wanted to tell him thank you, and wanted to voice our support for the application, and hopeful that you are supportive of it too.
Thanks for being here. Thank you for your testimony.
Thanks.
Thanks for sticking with us on this agenda. Any other hands? Anybody in the room want to fill out a card?
Yes, I don't see anyone coming forward, and I don't see any other hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. Well, thank you again for public testimony today. Having received this public testimony, I will now close our public hearing. And the second reading is scheduled for June 22nd. That's when council will consider and vote on the schedule. We're scheduled to vote. We now have before us ordinance number 23-1493 for second reading and vote. As you recall, we had our first reading and public hearing on May 18th. And at that time, we received no testimony on 23-1493. So today, we will have our second reading for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 20.27 acres located in Hillsborough on the east side of Northeast Sewell Avenue. And Glenn Hamburg is still with us as our regional planner to answer any questions on this ordinance. I see no questions. So given that, I'm gonna ask for a motion on 23-1493.
I will move to adopt ordinance number 23-1495? No,
93.
1493, excuse me.
And is there a second?
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Rosenthal, seconded by Councilor Simpson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I am gonna ask Connor to please call our roll.
Thank you. Councilor Wong?
Aye.
Councilor Simpson?
Aye.
Councilor Rosenthal?
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis?
Aye. Thank you all. 23-1493 passes with unanimous support. Next on our agenda is ordinance number 23-1494 for the purposes of annexing to the Metro District approximately 27.41 acres located in Hillsborough on the east side of Northeast Sewell Avenue and north side of Northeast Evergreen Road. And Glenn Hamburg, you're still our regional planner, and you're going to answer any questions. Do you have a staff report on this?
No, not beyond what we looked at a few weeks ago, adjacent to the property that was just approved for annexation, just a separate chunk.
And similarly on this one, we received no testimony 2 weeks ago. Any questions, colleagues? Seeing no questions, I'm going to ask for a motion.
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion from Counselor Rosenthal, a second from Counselor Simpson. Connor, could you please call roll for 23-1494?
Yes, thank you. Counselor Simpson.
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal.
Aye.
Counselor Wong.
Aye.
And Deputy Council President Lewis.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you all.
Large bucket of work today. Moving us along in our agenda, Marisa Madrigal, our Chief Operating Officer, might have some communication for us.
Thank you, Deputy Council President and councilors. Just one update for you. Wanted to share, and I know that you have an email from me with communications that have gone to Multnomah County regarding their corrective action plan. I wanted to let you know that our team's in daily conversation with them. I believe that we're making good progress toward an agreed upon plan, but we're not quite finished. As a reminder, Multnomah County materially underspent about $70 million in their spend down plan for fiscal year 23. Fiscal year 23 ends in about 15 days. So we are going to be working with them to project out into the next fiscal year, short term, what expenses they can spend, and also how we can track those expenses with them, alongside them, to ensure that they're staying on track. So more detail to come, but just wanted to give you a quick update. I want to really thank our team in the Housing Department, OMA, and the Attorney's Department, Attorney's Department Office, your team, Finance, and our colleagues at Multnomah County for putting in the effort to get this done quickly for our community. Thank you.
Any questions?
I have
Yes.
one. Thank you, Marisa, for our director, or COO, Madrigal. I'm so sorry, I'm all over the place. Is part of that cap an increase around how salaries for outreach workers and folks that have to engage and go out to do outreach in the houseless community?
Everything is on the table, including salary increases or COLA increases for partners.
And if I remember specifically, $2 million was already in their new amended plan for COLA, but that may not be sufficient for all the opportunity to get those workers going.
That's right.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you. Are we working, or will we have to work on a similar corrective action plan with any other county, and will this form the basis for that, or be used as a model?
There are no other counties that have materially deviated from their spending plans, and so there are no other counties that have triggered a corrective action plan. This is the first that we're doing, so we are being extra careful to make sure that we're doing it correctly and building a model that can be used should we need it in the future.
Okay.
Councilor Wong.
Great, thank you. Can you outline the process going forward in terms of, what happens once there is a plan? Does it then go to kind of the oversight committee or Tri-County Planning Committee? And then, what happens before it's formal?
That's a great question. And it's really, the corrective action plan is a tool that's outlined in the IGA. I'll actually sit up straight. Would you like to answer that question?
I'm happy to answer that question, Councilor Huang and members of the council. So the corrective action plan really is, it's an implementation of, the IGA. And so as such, does not really go to the Oversight Committee or the Tri-County Planning Body for approval. As an initial step, it's informed by comments that we receive from the Oversight Committee. The actual process requires submittal by the county, approval by the COO before it becomes a final document. So there is information that's taken in at the front end from the Oversight Committee that helps inform the need for a corrective action plan.
So there's no, it doesn't come to this council in any way, but we're relying on our staff to keep us informed and make the decision basically to adopt it.
Yes. Yep.
Understood, thank you.
Colleagues, any further discussion? My expectation is that we might have this as an update every week for the coming month, because I think things are moving quickly. Staff are doing a lot of work, and I respect that the work staff's doing is highly technical, but I think some of it is very much relational between all of the different agencies that need to do this work, and to keep us apprised, please.
Absolutely.
Anything else on your report?
That's it.
Okay, counselor communication for the day. Okay, I have a slew. I will go through as quickly as I can. First, the Tri-County Planning Body met yesterday afternoon, and the agenda items included analysis of the equity tool that's being used, as well as status updates on several of the programs that have been prioritized, including a panel on all three counties and their landlord recruitment and retention programs. Something that's really important to know is all three counties have staff who are very specifically working with landlords, not only to recruit them, but to make sure that any property damage, not even after a tenant moves out, but even while somebody is still in there but is discovered during an inspection, can be covered. And there have been very few claims relative to the number of Arlo vouchers that are out there. So a lot of success that we're seeing in landlord recruitment and retention. The other things I wanted to report on were last night, the Metro South Community Enhancement Grant Program awarded over $340,000 to 13 grantees in Oregon City, serving community needs from parks to statue repair, to repair of paths and historic properties in the immediate vicinity. Neighborhood associations, community members all getting involved. It was a good process and a good set of awardees. And then finally, as Councilor Gonzalez is not here, it's important to note that JPAC was held this morning. 2 agenda items, MTIP amendment, as well as RTP. RTP, we voted for releasing the draft for public comment. I believe that goes out July 10th. And that public engagement process this summer is kind of the big deal for reviewing project lists as well as policies. So councilors, please be prepared in 2 weeks to get that out to your constituents. Did I miss anything, Councilor Simpson, for our JPAC report?
No, I think that was it. That was it.
Okay, seeing no further Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair Lewis. You reminded me of something that I forgot to report on recently, the community enhancement grants. Over the last 2 weeks, both Wilsonville and Sherwood have met on their community enhancement grants, approximately $80,000 in both cases, which they've allocated to local groups. One interesting area was a request for expansion of intake for supportive housing services from a church group in Wilsonville, and the committee decided to refer that back and particularly ask this group to consult with the county to see whether this was more fundable under the monies that the county has under supportive housing services. But these involve a bunch of things, including a chicken barbecue for the festival in Sherwood and so forth. And then one other minor item, I suppose, there was the West Side Economic Alliance met yesterday morning, and some of the people who had been at the Washington DC JPAC thing were there. A lot of emphasis was placed on the West Side Economic Alliance reviewing particularly the upcoming RTP and the deadlines and, when it was going to be released and the 45-day comment period. So it's something that is on their radar and something that they were encouraged to participate in.
Great. Well, thank you so much, counselors. I know we had a long meeting. We did all the different things. We did ordinances, we did resolutions, we did budget, we did land use. So thanks for sticking with us. See no further discussion. I'm gonna adjourn our meeting and remind everyone our next regular meeting is scheduled for June 22nd, 10:30 a.m. Have a great day.
Thank you.